Did you know that most of the fear and anxiety we experience doesn't come from the actual events in our lives, but from how we perceive them? It's a concept that ancient Stoic philosophers mastered over 2,000 years ago, yet it feels more relevant than ever in today's fast-paced, constantly connected world. In an age where uncertainty is a constant, from career challenges to personal relationships, learning how to manage fear and anxiety isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. This video will explore 5 specific strategies grounded in Stoic wisdom that will help you not only face these emotions, but transform them into tools for growth and resilience. These are timeless methods practiced by great thinkers and leaders throughout history, strategies that have been tested and integrated into the daily lives of successful people, bringing about profound and lasting change. Before we dive in, if you appreciate what we're doing here, a simple favor I'll ask is to hit that subscribe button. It's free and makes a huge difference. And don't skip any part of the video, because each strategy builds on the next, and by the end, you'll have the tools to confront fear and anxiety with confidence and live a life anchored in strength and clarity. Let's get started and uncover how to overcome your fear and anxiety and take back control of your life. 1. Understanding fear and anxiety through Stoicism. Fear and anxiety often feel like unwelcome guests in our lives, showing up uninvited and overstaying their welcome. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself what these emotions truly are? The Stoics would tell you that fear and anxiety are not the monsters we imagine them to be. Instead, they're signals, messengers that highlight our judgments about the world and the things we value. Understanding this is the first step toward managing them. Imagine you're standing on a stage, about to give a speech. Your heart races, your palms sweat, and your mind begins to spiral with what ifs. What if I forget my words? What if they laugh? What if I fail? The Stoics would pause and ask, why does this situation cause you anxiety? Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and one of Stoicism's greatest teachers, believed it's not the situation itself that troubles you, but your perception of it. He wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Fear, according to Stoicism, arises when we imagine losing something we value, our reputation, our safety, or our comfort. Anxiety, its close cousin, emerges when we anticipate this loss before it even happens. Both emotions feed off uncertainty, magnifying the unknown into something terrifying. But here's where Stoic wisdom shines. They teach us that we don't have to be ruled by these feelings. Instead, we can interrogate them, understand their roots, and decide whether they deserve our attention. One of the most profound lessons from Stoicism is the distinction between what is within our control and what is not. Epictetus, a former slave-turned-philosopher, put it simply, some things are up to us, and some things are not. You can't control how others will react to your speech, the weather on the day of an important event, or the twists and turns of life. But what you can control is your own mind, how you think about these situations, and how you choose to respond. When fear and anxiety show up, the Stoics would encourage us to ask ourselves, is this within my power? If it's not, then why waste precious energy worrying about it? Imagine carrying a heavy bag filled with things you can't use or need. This is what it's like to carry anxiety over things you cannot control. Letting go of that weight isn't just liberating, it's life-changing. But what about the things we can control? Stoicism doesn't encourage passive acceptance of fate. On the contrary, it urges us to take responsibility for our actions and thoughts. If fear arises from your belief that you're unprepared for a challenge, then prepare. If anxiety stems from uncertainty, focus on the steps you can take to navigate it. The Stoics believed in living actively, not reactively, and this proactive mindset can dismantle fear before it takes hold. There's another aspect to this that the Stoics understood deeply: the role of values. Fear often signals a misalignment between what we value and what we focus on. Are we overly concerned with the opinions of others? Are we clinging too tightly to material possessions or fleeting moments of comfort? Seneca, another prominent Stoic thinker, reminds us, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man." This doesn't mean we should disregard fear entirely, but rather examine it. Is it pointing us towards something trivial or something meaningful? By anchoring ourselves in Stoic principles, we begin to see fear and anxiety for what they are, not insurmountable forces, but invitations to reflect and grow. They ask us to reevaluate our priorities, adjust our perceptions, and focus on what truly matters. When we face these emotions with a Stoic mindset, we reclaim our power. We stop being passive recipients of our feelings and become active participants in our lives. So, the next time fear or anxiety starts knocking at your door, pause. Ask yourself, what am I truly afraid of? Is this within my control? Am I focusing on what really matters? These are the questions the Stoics would ask, and their answers hold the key to transforming fear into a tool for growth. By embracing this perspective, we can begin to live with greater peace, clarity, and purpose, free from the chains of unnecessary worry. 2. The power of perception. It's incredible how much our thoughts shape our reality. Two people can face the exact same situation, and yet one feels calm while the other feels consumed by anxiety. What's the difference? It's not the situation, it's their perception of it. This idea lies at the heart of Stoicism. The ancient Stoics believed that the way we interpret the world determines how we experience it, and by mastering our perceptions, we can change how we respond to life's challenges. Imagine you're caught in a traffic jam. You can't control the cars around you or the ticking clock, but you can control how you interpret the situation. One perspective might be frustration. This is ruining my day. Another might be gratitude. At least I have this time to listen to my favorite podcast. The event doesn't change, but your perception of it does. This shift, small as it may seem, can completely transform your emotional state. Epictetus had a powerful way of explaining this. He said, "What upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about these things." Think about that for a second. It's not the traffic jam, the missed opportunity, or the rude comment that upsets us. It's the meaning we attach to those experiences. When we learn to question these judgments, we take back control over how we feel. This isn't just about traffic jams or minor annoyances. Stoicism teaches us to apply this principle to life's biggest challenges. Imagine losing a job. At first glance, this might seem devastating, and it's natural to feel fear or sadness. But the Stoics would encourage us to ask, is there another way to see this? Perhaps losing this job creates space for new opportunities. Perhaps it's a chance to realign your life with what truly matters. Reframing your perception doesn't make the challenge disappear, but it changes how you navigate through it. The beauty of this Stoic principle is that it empowers us to choose how we respond to the world. It reminds us that our perceptions are not fixed, they are malleable. Seneca, another prominent Stoic, said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Often, we let our minds spiral, turning small setbacks into massive catastrophes, but by anchoring ourselves in rational thought, we can stop that spiral in its tracks. A practical way to do this is to pause whenever you feel overwhelmed. Instead of reacting immediately, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about this situation? Sometimes, just identifying the narrative in your head can help you realize that it's exaggerated or unhelpful. From there, you can consciously choose a new, more empowering perspective. This practice of reframing isn't about pretending everything is fine when it's not. Stoicism isn't about blind optimism. It's about seeing things clearly and choosing a response that aligns with your values and goals. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself to focus on what he could do in the present moment, rather than getting lost in fear or regret. He wrote, "Don't let your reflection on the whole sweep of life crush you. Stay focused on the present situation." The Stoics also understood that perception can turn adversity into opportunity. A failure can be seen as a dead end or as a lesson. A rejection can feel like a loss or a redirection towards something better. By shifting our perspective, we take ownership of our experiences, no matter how difficult they may be. When you start to see your perception as a tool, you realize how much power you have over your emotional state. Life will always throw challenges your way. That's unavoidable. But what is within your control is how you interpret those challenges. And as the Stoics would say, mastering this is the key to mastering yourself. 3. Focusing on the present. Have you ever noticed how much of your time is spent anywhere but here, in this moment? Your mind might be replaying a conversation from yesterday or spinning up scenarios about what might happen tomorrow. It's as if our thoughts are constantly tugging us away from the one place where life is actually happening, the present. The Stoics understood this, and they believed that true peace and clarity could only be found when we anchor ourselves in the now. Imagine this. You're sitting at your desk, working on a project, but instead of focusing on the task at hand, your thoughts are jumping between what you didn't finish last week and the mountain of things you need to get done tomorrow. That mental chatter creates stress, not because of the work itself, but because you're splitting your attention across moments that don't even exist anymore or haven't happened yet. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, put it simply, confine yourself to the present. This idea of staying present is deceptively simple. It doesn't mean ignoring the past or never planning for the future. The Stoics weren't advocating for recklessness or forgetfulness. Instead, they taught that our energy is best spent on what we can control right now, in this exact moment. The past is unchangeable, and the future is unpredictable. What we do in the present is the only thing that truly shapes our lives. Take a moment to think about how much anxiety stems from either regret or anticipation. You might be replaying an awkward moment from a week ago, wishing you'd said something different. Or maybe you're worried about an upcoming decision, playing out endless what-if scenarios in your head. The Stoics would encourage you to pause and ask yourself, what is within my power right now? Epictetus, one of Stoicism's great teachers, reminded us that the present is the only time where we can act, where we can make choices. Staying present doesn't just reduce anxiety, it enhances your experience of life. How often do we rush through our days without truly noticing them? We're so busy checking off tasks and worrying about what's next that we forget to appreciate the little things, the warmth of sunlight on our skin, the sound of laughter, or the satisfaction of completing a task well. The Stoics believed that by fully inhabiting the present moment, we can find joy and meaning even in the most mundane activities. One practice the Stoics used to stay grounded in the present was what we might call mindfulness today. They would remind themselves to focus on the task at hand, no matter how simple or complex it might be. Marcus Aurelius advised himself to do every act of your life as though it were the last act of your life. That doesn't mean living with constant urgency, but rather approaching every moment with care and intention. Even something as ordinary as eating a meal or having a conversation becomes richer when you're fully present. Another powerful Stoic tool is to break down overwhelming situations into smaller, manageable parts. Instead of worrying about everything that needs to be done, focus on the next step. Seneca suggested that we should never let the whole sweep of life crush us. By tackling one thing at a time, we not only make progress, but also avoid the paralysis that comes with overthinking. Living in the present also means accepting the moment as it is, without resisting it or wishing it were different. If it's raining, let it rain. If there's a delay, use that time for something else. The Stoics believed that fighting reality only adds to our suffering. Instead, by embracing the present, we align ourselves with the flow of life and find a kind of freedom. It's not always easy to stay present. Our minds are wired to wander, and modern life pulls our attention in a million directions. But the Stoics teach us that returning to the now is like strengthening a muscle. It gets easier with practice. Start small. The next time you feel your thoughts drifting to the past or future, gently bring them back to where you are. Notice your surroundings, your breath, or the task in front of you. This simple act can transform your relationship with time and with yourself. By focusing on the present, we reclaim our power. We stop being prisoners of what was or what might be, and instead fully engage with what is. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And the highest quality thoughts are those rooted in the here and now. 4. The practice of negative visualization. Have you ever noticed how often we avoid thinking about the worst-case scenario? It's almost like we believe that by not imagining it, we can somehow keep it from happening. But here's the catch. Avoiding those thoughts doesn't protect us. In fact, it can make us more anxious because the unknown looms larger in our minds. This is where one of the most profound Stoic practices, negative visualization, comes into play. It's not about being pessimistic or dwelling on bad outcomes. It's about preparing yourself mentally and emotionally so that fear no longer controls you. Imagine you're planning an important event, like a wedding or a business presentation. The thought of something going wrong, bad weather, technical failures, a forgotten detail, might send you into a spiral of anxiety. The Stoics would encourage you to face those fears head-on, not to scare yourself, but to diminish their power. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, wrote, "He robs present ills of their power, who has perceived their coming beforehand." In other words, when we calmly consider what could go wrong, we strip those possibilities of their ability to overwhelm us. Negative visualization involves intentionally imagining the worst-case scenario, but here's the key. It's done from a place of calm, not panic. You think through what might happen and how you would respond. For example, if you're worried about losing a job, you might ask yourself, what would I do if that happened? How would I manage financially? What opportunities might this open up? By confronting the possibility, you start to see that it's not as catastrophic as it feels when it's just an unspoken fear lurking in the back of your mind. This practice doesn't just prepare you for life's challenges, it also has a surprising side effect: gratitude. When you imagine losing something important, like your health, your home, or a loved one, it makes you appreciate those things even more in the present. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, often reflected on the impermanence of life as a way to stay grounded. He reminded himself that everything we have is borrowed, not owned. By practicing negative visualization, we learn to cherish what we have while we have it. There's a story often associated with Stoic thinkers about how they would periodically live as though they had lost everything. Seneca, for example, would spend days eating only the simplest food and wearing the roughest clothing, asking himself, "Is this what I feared?" This exercise helped him realize that even the worst circumstances weren't as bad as he might imagine. It gave him confidence that he could endure whatever came his way. Now, you might be wondering, doesn't imagining bad outcomes make you more anxious? It can seem counterintuitive, but the opposite is true. When you practice negative visualization, you move from vague, overwhelming fears to specific, manageable scenarios. It's like turning on the lights in a dark room. The shadows that seemed so terrifying are revealed to be ordinary furniture. Instead of being paralyzed by "what if?" you start asking, "So what? How would I handle this?" This practice also trains your mind to be more resilient. Life is unpredictable. Things will go wrong at some point. But if you've already imagined and prepared for those moments, they lose their sting. You stop seeing setbacks as insurmountable and start viewing them as challenges you're ready to face. Epictetus put it beautifully. Difficulties are things that show a person what they are. Negative visualization isn't about expecting the worst. It's about being ready for it. It's like carrying an umbrella on a cloudy day. You hope you won't need it, but you're prepared if you do. This preparedness doesn't make you anxious. It gives you confidence. You know that whatever comes your way, you have the tools to handle it. So how do you practice this? Start small. Take a few minutes each day to think about something you fear. Maybe it's a project going wrong, an unexpected expense, or a tough conversation. Visualize it in detail, not just the problem, but your response. What would you do? How would you adapt? And as you go through this exercise, remind yourself of your strengths and resources. Over time, you'll find that these fears lose their edge, and you gain a sense of calm and control. The beauty of negative visualization is that it's both practical and philosophical. It helps you prepare for life's challenges while also teaching you to appreciate life's blessings. The Stoics understood that by facing our fears directly, we free ourselves from their grip, and in doing so, we find a deeper sense of peace, gratitude, and resilience. 5. Building resilience through endurance. Resilience isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. And often it's built in the moments when life challenges you the most. Think back to a time when you faced a significant obstacle. Maybe it was losing a job, dealing with a difficult relationship, or navigating a personal failure. At the time, it might have felt overwhelming, even impossible. But looking back, you likely see that those experiences shaped you. They revealed your strength and your capacity to endure. This, at its core, is what the Stoics believed, that endurance is the foundation of resilience. The Stoics had a unique way of looking at hardships. Rather than seeing them as setbacks, they viewed them as opportunities for growth. Seneca famously said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Challenges, he argued, are what sharpen our character. Just like a blade grows sharper with friction, we grow stronger through the struggles we endure. Consider how this plays out in real life. Think of an athlete training for a marathon. The process isn't easy. Long runs, sore muscles, days when motivation feels non-existent. But through the pain and effort, their endurance grows. The same is true for our mental and emotional resilience. Each time we face a difficulty and choose not to give up, we become better equipped to handle the next challenge. The Stoics were practical philosophers, and they didn't just talk about resilience, they lived it. Epictetus, for example, was born into slavery and faced unimaginable hardships. Yet he didn't let his circumstances define him. Instead, He focused on what he could control, his mindset and his actions. He taught his students that we can't always choose our circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. Difficulties are things that show a person what they are, he said. In other words, adversity reveals our true character. One of the key Stoic principles is to prepare for hardships in advance. They called this premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. It involves imagining potential challenges and considering how you might respond. This practice isn't about dwelling on negative possibilities. It's about building mental fortitude. By preparing for difficulties, you're less likely to be caught off guard when they arise. And when you've already envisioned yourself enduring tough times, you're more confident in your ability to face them. Another way the Stoics built resilience was by embracing voluntary discomfort. Seneca, for instance, would periodically live as though he were poor, eating simple food and wearing plain clothes. He wanted to remind himself that even in the worst circumstances, he could endure. "Is this the condition I so feared?" he would ask. This practice not only strengthened his resilience, but also reduced his fear of losing comfort and luxury. When you know you can handle discomfort, you stop being afraid of it. Endurance also teaches us patience. The Stoics understood that not all challenges can be overcome quickly. Sometimes the only way out is through. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about the importance of perseverance. He reminded himself to approach each day's tasks, no matter how difficult, with discipline and focus. "Endure and persist," he wrote. "This is the philosophy of life." It's easy to romanticize resilience, but the truth is, building it isn't glamorous. It's messy, uncomfortable, and often frustrating, but it's also deeply rewarding. Every time you push through a difficult moment, you prove to yourself that you're capable. You learn that pain, whether physical or emotional, is temporary. You discover that setbacks don't have to define you. They can refine you. The Stoics didn't see resilience as an end goal, but as an ongoing practice. Life will continue to test us, sometimes in ways we can't predict. But by embracing endurance, we become stronger with each challenge. We stop fearing difficulties and start seeing them as opportunities to grow. 6. Detaching from outcomes. Have you ever felt paralyzed by the need to achieve a certain outcome? Maybe you've poured your energy into a project, a relationship, or a personal goal, only to find yourself obsessively worrying about whether it will work out the way you hoped. It's exhausting, isn't it? That fear of failure or disappointment can steal your peace of mind. But what if you could let go of that pressure and simply focus on the process itself? The Stoics believed this was not only possible, but essential for living a fulfilling life. At the heart of Stoicism is the idea that while we can control our actions, we cannot control their outcomes. Epictetus put it simply, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not. Your effort, your preparation, and your attitude, those are within your control. But the results, those depend on countless factors, many of which are completely outside your influence." Recognizing this distinction is liberating. It frees you from the burden of worrying about what you can't change and allows you to channel your energy into what you can. Think about an artist working on a painting. They pour their heart and soul into the brushstrokes, but once the painting is complete, how others perceive it is out of their hands. Will it be admired or criticized? The Stoics would say that's irrelevant. What matters is that the artist gave their best effort and stayed true to their vision. The same applies to any endeavor in life. Whether you're applying for a job, training for a marathon, or starting a new business, your job is to give it your all, not to cling to a specific result. But detaching from outcomes doesn't mean you stop caring. In fact, it's the opposite. It means caring deeply about what you're doing while accepting that the result is not entirely yours to determine. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, often reminded himself to focus on his duty rather than the rewards. "Never let the future disturb you," he wrote. "You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." This mindset allows you to stay grounded in the moment, free from the anxiety of what might or might not happen. One of the biggest sources of stress in life is the gap between expectation and reality. We set our sights on a specific outcome, and when things don't go as planned, we feel frustrated, disappointed, or even defeated. The Stoics teach us that this suffering often comes not from the situation itself, but from our attachment to how we thought things should be. By detaching from those expectations, we can face life's twists and turns with greater resilience and calm. Imagine you're studying for an important exam. You've done everything you can to prepare. Hours of reading, practice tests, sleepless nights. But on the day of the exam, the questions are unexpectedly challenging, or maybe you're not feeling well. The outcome is uncertain, no matter how much effort you've put in. Instead of fixating on the score, the Stoics would encourage you to focus on the effort you made. Did you prepare diligently? Did you give it your best? If the answer is yes, then you've succeeded, regardless of the grade. This approach also applies to relationships. Sometimes, despite your best efforts to communicate, support, or nurture someone, the relationship doesn't work out. It's tempting to blame yourself or feel like a failure, but the Stoics would remind you that the other person's choices and feelings are not within your control. What is within your control is how you showed up, how you acted, and how you treated them. By focusing on those aspects, you can find peace even when things don't go the way you hoped. Detaching from outcomes is not about giving up ambition or goals. It's about anchoring your happiness and sense of self in the process rather than the result. When you define success by your effort rather than by external validation, you take back your power. Seneca said it best: "The wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not." This doesn't mean settling. It means finding fulfillment in the act of striving rather than in the fruits of your labor. The beauty of this Stoic principle is that it creates a kind of invincibility. When you detach from outcomes, you're no longer at the mercy of circumstances. Whether you win or lose, succeed or fail, you remain steady because your value isn't tied to what happens. It's tied to how you live. 7. Living with courage. Courage is one of those qualities we all admire in others, but often hesitate to claim for ourselves. We think of heroes in movies, firefighters running into burning buildings, or activists standing up against injustice. And while those are undoubtedly acts of bravery, courage isn't reserved for extraordinary moments. It's something we're called to practice every single day, often in the quiet, personal battles that no one else sees. The Stoics understood this deeply. To them, courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about taking action despite the fear. Think about the last time you were afraid to do something important. Maybe it was speaking up in a meeting, confronting someone about an issue, or even starting something new, like a project or a relationship. That little voice in your head might have whispered, "What if I fail? What if I look foolish?" Fear can be so paralyzing because it plays on our most vulnerable emotions. But here's the thing: courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to move forward in spite of it. As Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, said, "He who is brave is free." The Stoics believed that fear is a natural part of life. It's how we respond to it that defines us. Epictetus taught his students to focus on what's within their control. You might not be able to eliminate fear entirely, but you can control how you act when it shows up. He said, Don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. In other words, stop waiting for the perfect conditions or the moment when you feel completely confident. Take action now, even if you're scared. Courage isn't always about grand gestures. It's often found in the small, everyday decisions. It's the courage to say no to something that doesn't align with your values, even if it's uncomfortable. It's the courage to stand up for yourself when someone crosses a boundary. It's the courage to admit when you're wrong and make amends. These moments might not make headlines, but they shape your character and strengthen your spirit. One of the most powerful aspects of Stoic courage is the idea of embracing discomfort. The Stoics knew that growth and progress often require stepping into the unknown. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This means that courage starts with mindset. When you face a challenge, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What can I learn from this? How can I grow through this?" Fear often thrives on uncertainty. The what-ifs can spiral out of control, making the challenge ahead seem insurmountable. But the Stoics would remind us that much of what we fear never actually comes to pass. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." By confronting our fears head-on, we often find that they're not as overwhelming as we thought. It's the act of avoiding or running from fear that gives it power. Courage also requires vulnerability. And this might be the hardest part. To live with courage means to take risks, knowing full well that you might fail or be hurt. But as the Stoics teach, failure is not something to fear, it's something to embrace. Every setback is an opportunity to learn and improve. Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body, Seneca wrote. When you stop fearing failure, you open yourself up to possibilities you might never have imagined. Another important aspect of Stoic courage is its connection to integrity. True courage isn't reckless or selfish. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. It's about staying true to your principles, even when it costs you something. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to act with justice, kindness, and humility, no matter the circumstances. Courage, in this sense, is about staying anchored in your values when the world tries to pull you in different directions. Living with courage doesn't mean you won't feel fear. You will. But every time you face it and choose to act anyway, you're building a muscle. And just like any other muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Over time, you'll find that the things that once intimidated you no longer have the same grip. You'll discover a sense of freedom that comes from knowing you can handle whatever life throws your way. Fear and anxiety don't have to control your life. With the timeless wisdom of Stoicism, you have the power to transform these emotions into strength, clarity, and resilience. Remember, every step you take toward mastering your emotions is a step toward mastering your life. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal today. Your time and attention mean the world to me. If you found value in this video, don't stop here. Click on one of the suggested videos on your screen to dive deeper into practical Stoic strategies that will guide you toward living a calmer, more fulfilled life. And as always, stay strong, stay centered, and I'll see you in the next video.